Before we start with the video, I want to let you know that if you want, you can leave a message below in the comments with the title of the story you want me to create and I will create it for you. Now let's start with the story. The war had stretched on for 200 grueling years. What had once been an effort of collective defense for the survival of humanity had become a way of life. Generations had grown up knowing nothing but conflict with the gyre, an implacable and merciless alien race. The gyre's technology was advanced, their tactics cold and precise, and their motivations incomprehensible. The Earth and its colonies, once hopeful symbols of human ingenuity and expansion, had been reduced to nothing more than battlefields. Entire cities had been converted into fortified strongholds, sprawling industrial hubs now only existed to fuel the unending war effort. Earth itself had become a bastion of survival, surrounded by a ring of orbital defenses that encased the planet like a steel cocoon. This war had changed humanity. Society had shifted towards militarization, with conscription becoming the natural passage into adulthood. Youths were taught war tactics before they learned to read, children played games where they fought gyre drones as simulated training, preparing them for an inevitable future as soldiers. Technology, culture, and innovation, once driven by curiosity and the spirit of exploration, had all been reoriented around the singular goal of survival. Entertainment, art, and science faded into the background, their relevance minimal in the shadow of an existential threat. But even amidst this brutal adaptation, hope lingered. It was faint, whispered in dark corners of bunkers and barracks. Rumors circulated of a forgotten age, a time when humanity had roamed the stars not as prey, but as masters. These stories, often dismissed as mere myth, spoke of the flagship Terrans, a race of humans who had reached unimaginable heights in both science and culture long before recorded history. They were said to have built vast cities that floated in the void, to have commanded fleets that spanned entire star systems, and to have wielded technology that rivaled the gods. Yet, these myths always ended the same way, with the collapse of their empire after a cataclysmic war against an alien force so powerful that it left the galaxy in ruins. For years, scholars and scientists had dismissed these tales as legends, the desperate creations of a race under siege. But there were always some who believed, fringe groups of researchers, archaeologists, and explorers who scoured long-forgotten corners of the Earth and its colonies, searching for relics of this supposed golden age. Their work was largely unsupported, the resources too sparse, and the political climate too focused on the gyre threat to divert attention to ancient mysteries. But then, 20 years ago, everything changed. Deep in the Atacama Desert, one of the few places left untouched by the war's devastation, a team of researchers uncovered something buried beneath the sands, an outpost, ancient and enigmatic, its architecture unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. The structure was partially eroded, its surface smoothed by millennia of wind and sand, but its foundations held fast. It was buried deep underground, hidden from the eyes of the world for what must have been thousands of years. Its halls, filled with strange symbols and unreadable script, hummed with latent power, as though it had been waiting, dormant but not dead. Dr. Elise Reinhard, a renowned archaeologist, led the excavation. Her eyes, once hardened by years of fruitless exploration, now gleamed with anticipation. As her team explored deeper into the outpost, they encountered technology far beyond anything humanity had created or imagined. Strange devices powered by self-sustaining energy sources filled the rooms. Machinery moved silently, untouched by the passage of time. Among these relics, they found what appeared to be a central control chamber. At the heart of it was a large console, its surface illuminated with faint, pulsing light. The symbols were indecipherable, but there was no mistaking the purpose. It was some kind of interface, perhaps a control panel or communication terminal. Driven by equal parts curiosity and desperation, Reinhard's team began to interact with the console. Though they lacked the necessary understanding to fully comprehend the technology before them, they managed to trigger something. A low, resonating hum filled the room, and the air grew thick with static. Then, a surge of energy pulsed outward, spreading through the outpost and beyond. At first, the pulse went unnoticed, seen as nothing more than an anomaly by Earth's defensive systems. It wasn't until days later that the true significance of the event became clear. Far out in the reaches of space, deep among the forgotten stars, something had responded. The pulse had sent a signal, a beacon, into the galaxy, and now, something was listening. Unbeknownst to the researchers, they had just awakened the remnants of a lost age. The excavation continued, but now with a new sense of urgency. The discovery was kept secret, hidden even from Earth's military command. Reinhard and her team realized they had stumbled upon something far more significant than mere ruins. They had uncovered proof that the legend of the ancient Terrans was real. But more than that, they learned of the horrifying truth behind the legend. Buried within the depths of the outpost, they found archives, records of a long-forgotten war. The information was fragmented, and much of it was encrypted beyond their understanding, but they pieced together enough to comprehend the gravity of what they had found. The ancient Terrans had indeed once ruled the galaxy, their empire vast and their technology unmatched. But they were not alone. Their reign had been challenged by an alien force, a race whose power rivaled even their own. The war had raged for centuries, devastating entire star systems, and pushing both sides to the brink of annihilation. The archives detailed the final days of the war. In a desperate bid to win, the ancient Terrans had unleashed a weapon of unimaginable power, something so destructive that it tore through the fabric of reality itself. It was said that the weapon had burned the stars and shattered the planets. The cost of their victory had been the complete collapse of their empire. Earth itself had been destroyed, reduced to a smoldering, lifeless wasteland. The galaxy, once vibrant and full of life, was left a graveyard, with only a handful of survivors scattered across the void. In their final act, the remaining Terrans had fled. They gathered the remnants of their fleets, boarded colossal arc ships, and left the Milky Way galaxy, setting a course for a distant, uncharted galaxy where they could start anew. They left behind only fragments of their once great civilization, hidden in the ruins of outposts like the one in the Atacama Desert. These outposts were never meant to be found. They were the final echoes of a lost age, waiting to be buried by time. But now, Reinhard's team had awoken those echoes. The galaxy, dormant for thousands of years, had begun to stir. As news of the discovery slowly leaked to Earth's leadership, it caused both awe and fear. If the ancient Terrans had faced such a cataclysmic war, what might this mean for humanity's current struggle? Could the gyre be connected to this ancient enemy? And more terrifying still, if the ancient Terrans had fled, what could possibly have been powerful enough to force them into exile? The questions gnawed at the minds of the Earth's leaders, but there was little time to ponder them. For at that very moment, out in the depths of space, the gyre forces began to move. Their attacks became more coordinated, their strategies more aggressive. It was as if they sensed that something was coming, something far beyond humanity's comprehension. The gyre had always been a ruthless foe, but now, they fought with a desperation that suggested fear, a fear of what had been awakened. In the midst of this, Earth scientists worked tirelessly to decode more of the ancient archives. What little they had learned already confirmed their worst suspicions. Humanity was not alone in its struggle. They were walking the same path the ancient Terrans had walked 10,000 years ago. And just like their ancestors, they stood on the edge of a war that could destroy everything. The signal had been sent. Something in the stars had heard it. The question that now haunted humanity was simple: would this ancient power return to save them? Or would history repeat itself, and humanity be lost to the ashes of time, just as their predecessors had been? The echoes of the past were growing louder. And soon, the galaxy would answer. With the discovery of the ancient Terran outpost 20 years ago, humanity was thrust into a new and uncertain era. The revelation that their ancestors had once reigned supreme across the galaxy and then vanished, leaving behind only fragments of a civilization far more advanced than humanity could currently fathom, had shaken the foundations of human belief. What had once been legend was now confirmed truth, but with that confirmation came a haunting realization: if these ancient Terrans had been powerful enough to shape entire galaxies and yet still had to flee from some unseen catastrophe, what hope did humanity have? This knowledge came with a mix of hope and dread. On one hand, the existence of these ancestors hinted at the possibility of salvation, an ancient race of humans, out there somewhere, still wielding technology so far beyond the reach of modern science that it bordered on the divine. Did they still live? And if they did, would they come to help? But on the other hand, the gyre's increasingly brutal tactics suggested that they too were aware of the ancient Terrans and that they feared something far worse than humanity itself. For 2 centuries, the gyre had maintained a ruthless campaign of subjugation against Earth and its colonies. Their motivations remained largely unknown, their communications cryptic at best, and their technological prowess overwhelming. They seemed to have endless resources, and their methods had long been clear, eradicating resistance and enslaving the survivors. Yet in the years since the discovery of the ancient outpost, their attacks had escalated beyond any logical tactical response. It was as though the gyre felt time closing in around them, as if they knew something terrible was stirring in the depths of the cosmos. They pressed the war harder than ever, pushing humanity to the very brink. The hope of encountering their ancient ancestors kept the flames of resistance burning bright, but it also instilled a gnawing fear within the ranks of humanity. What if these ancestors were not the saviors they had hoped for? What if they had fled the galaxy for reasons far more dire than anyone had imagined? Humanity was walking in their footsteps, but with little understanding of where those footsteps truly led. The whispers grew louder, not just in the back rooms of the Earth Defense Council, but across civilian populations as well. People had heard the rumors. News of the outpost had inevitably leaked despite all efforts to contain it, and the truth had woven itself into the fabric of human consciousness. Many clung to the hope that these ancient Terrans would return to restore humanity's glory, to banish the gyre, and to lift the species out of the ashes of war. But for others, the fear of what lay hidden in the stars began to fester like a wound. The gyre, with their dark ships and methodical cruelty, had always seemed the embodiment of evil. But now, with the knowledge of the ancient war that had destroyed the galaxy 10,000 years ago, humanity began to suspect that the gyre were not the true terror. They were merely an echo of a far greater horror, a remnant or descendant of whatever force had once obliterated the ancient Terrans. The gyre were not conquerors, they were survivors. The gyre attacks grew more calculated and violent in the years following the outpost discovery. Raids on human colonies intensified, no longer solely focused on resource acquisition or population control. The gyre began targeting research facilities and ancient sites with surgical precision, as though they sought to destroy humanity's potential to uncover more of its hidden past. They ravaged scientific outposts and archaeological digs, burning the ground where any trace of the ancient Terrans might have been found. It was as though they believed the knowledge of the ancients posed a greater threat to them than any weapon humanity could field. Earth's defenses had evolved into a complex network of towering platforms, bristling with orbital cannons and kinetic shields. Spaceports had been converted into heavily fortified bastions of last resort, each equipped with planetary shields designed to repel full-scale assaults. Earth's skies were a web of defense grids, and humanity's military command felt the weight of every decision as they desperately tried to hold the line. The gyre, undeterred, sent wave after wave of ships against the defenses. Every month brought a new assault, with new tactics and new weapons, each deadlier than the last. Earth's fleets fought with a fierce resolve, but attrition was slowly taking its toll. The human fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, grew thinner with each battle. Repairs became slower, and new recruits were no longer enough to fill the gaps left by the dead. The gyre were not just winning, they were grinding humanity into submission. Then came the largest invasion yet. It started like any other gyre offensive, the ripple in the outer defense grid as their first wave emerged from hyperspace. But this time, the gyre fleet was larger than anything humanity had ever seen. The stars themselves seemed to be swallowed by their arrival. Dark, jagged ships poured from every direction, thousands of them, blotting out the light of nearby stars. They descended upon Earth with overwhelming force, their ships aligning into complex formations that shielded each other from orbital cannons and planetary defenses. It was a well-coordinated siege, the kind of battle plan that could only have been in preparation for years. From the massive war command centers deep underground, the Earth Defense Command watched in horror as their outermost defense platforms were annihilated within minutes. No defensive barrage could stop the gyre's relentless advance. Orbital cannons, though devastating, were overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemy vessels. From the planet's surface, the sky looked as if it were on fire, as debris from the shattered space platforms rained down in burning fragments. Panic spread across the globe, but the civilian population was no stranger to fear. Humanity had been preparing for this, the final stand. Bunkers buried miles below the surface were packed with civilians, while soldiers manned the last lines of planetary defenses, knowing they would likely never return home. The Earth's vast defense fleet, weakened by years of relentless war, took to the skies for one last desperate stand. Admiral Helena Korvek stood aboard the bridge of the Resolute, the flagship of the Earth Defense Fleet. The veteran commander had seen more battles than anyone still living, her scarred face a testament to her close brushes with death. As the gyre fleet descended upon her forces, she gave the order to meet them head-on. Thousands of human warships surged forward in a final, desperate charge. It was a battle not for victory but for survival, to buy just a few more hours, perhaps even minutes, for the planet below. But the gyre's assault was merciless. Their fleet, vast and cold, pressed down with brutal efficiency. Earth's defenses crumbled under the pressure. One by one, the human warships were cut down, their wreckage forming a grim graveyard in the void above the planet. The sky filled with smoke and fire as the gyre began bombarding the planetary shields. Even from the surface, the apocalyptic streaks of descending energy could be seen, tearing through the atmosphere like gods unleashing their fury. It seemed inevitable that the planet would fall, as though this had always been humanity's fate, a doomed species caught in a battle it was never meant to win. As the chaos raged above and below, a peculiar signal emerged from the deep fringes of space. The Earth's surviving orbital sensors, now only able to focus on sporadic points in the sky, picked up an anomaly, an irregular ripple, a disturbance that shouldn't have been possible. At first, it was dismissed as interference, perhaps a malfunction caused by the sheer intensity of the gyre bombardment. But the anomaly grew stronger, more pronounced. Admiral Korvek, her eyes glued to the holographic displays, froze for a moment as the readings from deep space changed. What had initially been dismissed as a false signal was now unmistakably real. Something vast, was moving through space, approaching Earth. The anomaly grew closer, spreading out across the darkness like the waves of an ocean stirred by an unseen force. Then, in a blinding flash of light, space itself seemed to tear open. Ships, hundreds, no, thousands of them, appeared out of the void. Their design was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. These ships did not follow the harsh, angular lines of gyre war machines, nor did they resemble the industrially efficient designs of Earth's military vessels. They were sleek, elegant, almost organic in their appearance. Their hulls shimmered with a strange, iridescent energy field that defied known laws of physics. The gyre fleet hesitated for the first time in its long campaign. Their ships, once so certain in their dominance, now held position as if they, too, were struck by disbelief. Then, the newly arrived fleet moved with terrifying grace and precision. The air around them shimmered, and strange weapons, far beyond anything humanity or the gyre possessed, unleashed beams of light so powerful that they cut through gyre warships as though they were made of paper. Within minutes, the gyre fleet, which had moments ago seemed unstoppable, was reduced to debris. Their forces were annihilated with such ease that it left the remaining human ships frozen in awe. The massive alien armada had been torn apart by a power so incomprehensible that it seemed like the gods themselves had intervened. When the battle ended, the mysterious fleet remained in orbit, casting long shadows over the now silent skies. The surviving human fleet watched with awe and terror as these newcomers took their place above Earth. A single transmission was sent to the planet below. The voice that came through the static was a clear and unmistakable human. "We are the Terrans of old. We have returned." The atmosphere across Earth changed the moment the transmission arrived. The voice that spoke was calm, deep, and unmistakably human, but it carried with it the weight of eons. It was as though the voice of a forgotten era had slipped through time, its authority and serenity cutting through the chaos that had enveloped humanity for centuries. "We are the Terrans of old. We have returned." Those simple words sent a wave of disbelief rippling across the planet. From the highest ranks of Earth's defense command, huddled in their fortified bunkers, to the soldiers fighting on the crumbling fronts, and the civilians waiting anxiously in their underground shelters, the message was heard. The gravity of it took time to sink in. For generations, humanity had been locked in a seemingly endless struggle for survival, convinced that they were alone in a hostile universe. Now, the ancient ancestors, the legendary Terrans who had vanished from the annals of history 10 millennia ago, had come back. But with their return came profound questions. Why now? Where had they been? And most importantly, what did they want? For hours after the transmission, Earth stood still. Communication channels buzzed with activity, but no further word came from the colossal fleet now hovering in orbit above the planet. The sky was crowded with their ships, elegant and massive, their designs impossibly advanced, glowing faintly with energies beyond human comprehension. They did not resemble the angular, industrial designs of Earth's war vessels or the grotesque spires of the gyre armadas. Instead, they exuded an eerie grace, their surfaces rippling like liquid metal, reflecting the light of distant stars. On the surface, confusion reigned. The battle that had raged in orbit against the gyre forces had been abruptly halted by the arrival of these newcomers. The shattered remains of the gyre fleet drifted through space, their once mighty ships reduced to debris in mere minutes. But no Terran ship fired a weapon again. They simply waited, holding their position above Earth as if expecting humanity to make the next move. In the halls of Earth's leadership, panic gave way to awe and trepidation. Earth's leaders, military and civilian alike, scrambled to make sense of the situation. These were not the enemies they had prepared for, nor were they the saviors they had expected. The ancient legends of the Terrans had always seemed like distant myths, half-remembered stories passed down from scholars and historians. No one had truly believed that those ancient forebears still existed, let alone thrived. A meeting was called, hastily arranged in the depths of a fortified command center. Representatives from every major nation and colony gathered around holographic displays, studying the colossal Terran ships. Their designs were entirely alien yet unmistakably human in origin. Whatever technology the Terrans now possessed, it was light years ahead of anything Earth had managed to develop. There was no question of resistance. If these ancient Terrans had returned with hostile intentions, Earth would be powerless to stop them. Why now? President Kane, the de facto leader of Earth's coalition government, asked, her voice trembling slightly. Why after all this time? Admiral Helena Corvex, who had survived the brutal gyre onslaught and commanded what remained of Earth's defense fleet, stood at the forefront of the room. Her grizzled face betrayed little emotion, but her sharp eyes remained locked on the images of the Terran ships. Whatever their reason, they chose to save us. For now, that's all that matters, she said, though doubt still lingered beneath her hardened exterior. But we need answers. We can't afford to assume their intentions align with ours. Hours later, a signal was sent from the surface to the massive Terran fleet in orbit. Earth's leadership requested a formal meeting, hoping to understand the motives behind their arrival. The response came swiftly. A shuttle would be sent to bring Earth's representatives aboard one of their command ships. There was no refusal, no negotiation. Earth's leaders would go to them. President Kane, Admiral Corvex, and a select group of advisors boarded the shuttle that arrived soon after, a sleek, nearly silent craft that appeared to glide through the air as though it defied gravity. The interior of the vessel was just as advanced, with no visible controls, only smooth panels that shimmered with faint energy. The human delegation felt like they were entering a dream, the boundary between reality and myth blurring as they left the atmosphere and approached the massive Terran flagship. The ship, which dwarfed anything in Earth's fleet, opened its doors to them. Inside, the halls were bathed in soft light, the air almost humming with power. It felt like stepping into a living entity, the walls subtly shifting in response to their presence. As the delegation was escorted to the central chamber, they were met by figures clad in sleek, silver armor, their faces concealed behind translucent visors that offered glimpses of human-like features beneath. There was no doubt, these were their ancient ancestors. Finally, they were brought before the Terran leader. He stood at the center of an expansive chamber, his presence commanding and calm. His features were distinctly human, yet there was something otherworldly about him. His eyes shimmered with a depth that suggested he had seen not just centuries but millennia pass by. His hair was silver, flowing down his back, and his face, though marked with the lines of age, radiated an aura of vitality and strength that no human of Earth could possess. I am Archyle, High Sovereign of the Terran diaspora, the man said, his voice echoing through the chamber. We have watched over you for eons, waiting for the time when we would be needed. That time has come. President Kane stepped forward, her voice steady but her heart pounding. You've returned at our darkest hour. For that, we are grateful. But we need to understand, why now? Why after 10,000 years? Archyle's gaze softened slightly, as though he had expected this question. 10,000 years ago, we fought a war that nearly destroyed the galaxy. We were victorious, but the cost was the ruin of all we had built. The Earth was rendered uninhabitable, and the stars themselves burned in the wake of our final weapons. We had no choice but to leave, to seek refuge in another galaxy, far from the devastation we had wrought. He paused, his eyes drifting for a moment, as if recalling the horrors of that ancient war. We vowed that we would not interfere again unless it became absolutely necessary. We have watched from the edges of the cosmos as you rebuilt, as you rediscovered what was lost. But the gyre, they are a threat we cannot allow to fester any longer. Admiral Corvex, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. You've saved us from annihilation. But what are your intentions now? Are we to become your subjects? Your soldiers? Archyle shook his head slowly. We do not seek to rule you. But we cannot allow you to make the same mistakes we made. The galaxy still bears the scars of our hubris, and there are dangers far greater than the gyre lurking in the shadows of the universe. If you wish to survive what is coming, you must be prepared to join us in our journey, to leave Earth behind and face the darkness beyond. The price of survivor. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The leaders of Earth had always imagined that victory would come in the form of survival, of repelling the gyre and rebuilding their shattered civilization. But now, the Terrans were offering them something far more terrifying, the truth that the gyre were just the beginning. There were other threats, older and darker, lurking in the void. And the price of survival, it seemed, was abandoning their home. We cannot just leave, President Kane said, her voice barely above a whisper. Earth is our home. Our people have fought and died for this planet. How can we abandon it now? Archyle's expression remained impassive, but his voice softened. I understand. We, too, loved this world once. But the galaxy is far larger than you know, and the forces gathering in its dark corners will not spare you simply because you wish to remain. The gyre were but a shadow of the true threat that lies ahead. If you stay here, you will perish. There was silence in the chamber. The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone present. Earth's leaders had spent their lives defending their home, preparing for the day when they would finally drive the gyre away and rebuild what had been lost. Now, they were faced with a choice that went beyond mere survival. It was a choice between staying on Earth and dying in ignorance or joining the ancient Terrans and facing a future full of unknown perils. Admiral Corvex was the first to speak. If we join you, what will become of Earth? What happens to those who refuse to leave? Archyle's gaze was steady. Those who choose to stay will be left behind. We will provide you with the technology to defend yourselves, to hold off the gyre for as long as you can. But we cannot protect you forever. The forces gathering beyond this galaxy will come. And when they do, Earth will fall. The stark reality of the situation began to sink in. The leaders of Earth were being asked to make a decision not just for themselves, but for their entire species. Would they lead humanity into the stars, following the path of their ancient ancestors, or would they stay, clinging to the ruins of a world that was doomed to fall? The cost of survival was far higher than they had ever imagined. As the shuttle carried Earth's leaders back to the surface, the weight of the coming decision loomed over them. The Terrans had offered them salvation, but it came with a price many would be unwilling to pay. In the days that followed, Earth's population would have to decide whether to leave their home behind and join the Terrans on a journey into the unknown or stay behind and face the inevitable end. For centuries, humanity had fought to survive against alien threats, believing themselves alone in the cosmos. Now, they knew they were not. The ancient descendants of their species had returned, bearing knowledge and power beyond anything they could comprehend. But with that power came a terrifying revelation: the gyre were merely the beginning. The true enemy was still out there, waiting, watching. And humanity, once again, stood on the edge of extinction, this time, with a choice. The weeks that followed the Terrans' return were a blur of awe, tension, and transformation. Earth's surface, once scorched by the long war with the gyre, now began to feel the weight of a new reality, a future that would be irrevocably shaped by the presence of their ancient ancestors. Towering over the planet, the massive fleet of Terran ships shimmered like beacons in the night sky, their sleek and otherworldly forms casting long shadows over Earth's fractured cities. The Terrans wasted no time in offering their assistance. It was a type of help that went far beyond military intervention. What they gave was nothing short of a gateway to the future, an entire universe of knowledge that Earth scientists and engineers could barely comprehend. Their technology defied the laws of physics as humans understood them, enabling access to new forms of energy, materials, and ways of life that seemed like magic. Ships capable of traversing galaxies in the blink of an eye. Power sources that dwarfed the mightiest fusion reactors humanity had ever built. And most crucially, weapons that made even the gyre's advanced fleet seem like relics of a bygone age. However, beneath the marvels of Terran technology lay an unspoken tension. The return of these ancient humans, once believed lost to time, had not come without conditions. With every piece of knowledge offered, with every lesson taught and shared, the Terrans made it clear: the war with the gyre was just the beginning. There was something far worse looming on the edge of the galaxy. A darkness they had seen before. It was this threat, they explained, that had driven them from the Milky Way 10,000 years ago. It was time for humanity to decide its fate. The integration of the Terrans into Earth's fractured society was not a seamless process. The gulf between the two peoples, despite their shared ancestry, was staggering. The ancient Terrans, having evolved over thousands of years in a distant galaxy, were physically similar to the humans of Earth, but their minds, their values, and their experiences were utterly alien. They had lived through the fall of civilizations that spanned entire star systems. They had seen the rise and collapse of empires far greater than anything Earth could dream of. Their understanding of time, existence, and morality had shifted accordingly. To the humans of Earth, they appeared almost godlike. They spoke calmly of principles and truths that shattered the very foundations of Earth science and religion. They possessed knowledge of life beyond death, of the fabric of space and time, and of realities layered on top of one another like veils. But they also carried the weight of their own failures, of the galaxy they had once ruled and lost to war, pride, and desperation. The Terrans shared their knowledge freely, but with a stern warning: humanity would not survive the coming storm if they clung to the limitations of their present. Earth's people must evolve, not just technologically but philosophically, if they were to survive the battles ahead. A simple victory over the gyre would not be enough. The true enemy lurked in the depths of the cosmos, ancient and remorseless. Overnight, Earth became a flurry of activity. Factories that once produced weapons of war were converted to build starships capable of traveling to the farthest corners of the universe. Universities and research centers worked around the clock, attempting to decode the advanced principles the Terrans had shared. New schools and academies opened, teaching the children of Earth about the stars, about alien cultures, and about the universe beyond their planet's atmosphere. The dream of interstellar travel, once a distant fantasy, became an urgent necessity. But it wasn't just the physical changes that Earth had to grapple with, it was the psychological. The knowledge that their world was once destroyed, that their ancestors had fled in the face of an incomprehensible evil, left a deep and troubling mark on the psyche of the global population. Anxiety, excitement, fear, and hope intertwined as the people struggled to understand what their future now held. For many, the Terrans were saviors, having arrived at the last moment to pull humanity back from the brink. Others, however, viewed them with suspicion. If the Terrans had such advanced technology, why hadn't they intervened sooner? Why had they waited until humanity was on the verge of extinction to reveal themselves? And what exactly was this looming threat they spoke of, the one that had forced them to abandon Earth all those millennia ago? The Terrans made no secret of the horrors they had witnessed in their long exile. Archyle, their high sovereign, spoke to Earth's leaders with a solemnity that chilled even the most hardened military minds. The gyre, he explained in one of the private sessions with the Global Council, are merely a symptom of a larger disease. They, too, were once pawns in a greater conflict. We fought them once, long ago, but they were not the true enemy. They were, and still are, driven by something older, something darker. He gestured to a star map projected above the council table. The swirling arms of the Milky Way galaxy sparkled in holographic form, but at the galaxy's edges, near its unexplored borders, the light grew dim. When we left this galaxy, Arkyle continued, we did so because we had no other choice. The war we fought had scorched the stars themselves. In our desperation, we unleashed weapons that tore the fabric of space and time. But that war was not simply a battle between us and the gyre. There were other forces at play, forces that manipulated the conflict from the shadows. He pointed to the darkened areas on the map, regions so far removed from Earth that no human had ever ventured near them. In those corners of the galaxy lie entities that do not belong to any known species. They are not physical beings as you understand them, but forces of entropy and decay, cosmic aberrations that devour entire systems, that live in the spaces between realities. We call them the voidborn. The silence that followed Arkyle's words was suffocating. The room, filled with Earth's most powerful leaders, became cold and still. You're saying we're not just fighting for Earth anymore, President Kane finally said, her voice strained. We're fighting for the entire galaxy? Arkyle nodded. You are. But not just for this galaxy. The voidborn exist beyond the edges of known space. They are the reason we left. They are the reason we have returned. The Terran's warning sent shockwaves through the ranks of Earth's leadership and military. For the first time, it became clear that Earth's war with the gyre, though devastating, was merely the opening chapter of a much larger conflict. The true enemy, the voidborn, lurked in the shadows, waiting for the galaxy to weaken, to fall into chaos. If they emerged, there would be no hiding, no negotiating, only annihilation. The Terrans had not returned out of pity or compassion, they had returned because the survival of Earth was tied to their own. The war that was coming would decide the fate of more than just humanity, it would determine the fate of every species in the galaxy. But the cost of this alliance was staggering. The Terrans made it clear, Earth must prepare to leave. The Milky Way, ravaged by eons of conflict, was no longer a safe haven. If humanity wanted to survive, they would have to follow the Terrans on a journey to the far reaches of the universe, to a place where they could regroup, learn, and build their strength for the final confrontation with the voidborn. This demand sparked fierce debate across the planet. How could humanity abandon the only home they had ever known? The Earth, once ruined, had been painstakingly rebuilt over millennia. Its cities, though scarred by war, were still the heart of human civilization. Entire generations had fought and died to protect the planet, and now they were being asked to leave it behind. There were those who argued in favor of the Terran's plan. These individuals saw the wisdom in fleeing, in preparing for the larger war ahead. Earth, though resilient, could not withstand the combined might of the gyre and the voidborn. Better to preserve the species, they argued, than to perish defending a dying world. Others, however, were more skeptical. Was this really about survival, or were the Terrans seeking to use humanity as pawns in their own cosmic struggle? Could ancient humans be trusted? And what guarantee did Earth have that they wouldn't be abandoned once more, left to fend for themselves if the Terrans deemed the war unwinnable? As the debate raged on, the people of Earth were left to grapple with the implications of the Terrans' return. Across the globe, protests erupted. Some demanded answers, others demanded war. Religious leaders and philosophers spoke of the end times, of prophecies fulfilled. Scientists debate the ethics of abandoning Earth for a new galaxy. Families huddled in their homes, unsure of what their future held. But one thing was certain, humanity stood at a crossroads. The decision ahead was not just about survival, but about the very soul of the species. Would they cling to their home, to the planet that had nurtured them for millennia, or would they follow their ancient ancestors into the unknown, leaving behind everything they had ever known? As the Terran fleet remained poised in orbit, shimmering against the night sky, humanity prepared for the most difficult journey it had ever faced, a journey not just across the stars, but into the depths of its own destiny. The galaxy awaited their decision.
If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel and press the like button, it helps me a lot, thank you very much.